You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't going to be that fun.
All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Friday's Finest. My name is Chip Lake, and I'm going to be guest hosting the show today as Doug is out traveling. He's on assignment. He's busy. He's here. He's there. He's going from state to state. So today you're stuck with James and I for Friday's Finest. Florida, what I call the VP debate, the runner-up debate, right? I mean, I don't know that any of these people really have an opportunity to be the nominee of the Republican Party, but they're auditioning for something, and we're going to talk a little bit about that to start the show. Maybe talk a little Country Music Awards last night in Nashville, and then we're going to talk Jim Harbaugh, Connor Stallions, probably some Josh Dobbs, some Arthur Smith. He shaved his mustache this week. Some changes need to be made in Atlanta. And Arthur Smith stepped up and took some leadership and got rid of some facial hair. So hopefully it's a sign of good change for if you're a Falcons fan. And Doug and I are, and we'll talk a little bit with James about the game this past weekend against the Minnesota Vikings. The initial BCS rankings came out, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And we've got a really, really busy weekend coming up of college football and pro football. So stick with us after the break, and we'll get started.
Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finances. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you through these turbulent times. Hey everybody, it's MyPillow's 20th year anniversary, and over 80 million MyPillows have been sold. Mike Lindell and MyPillow wants to thank each of you and every one of you for giving you the lowest price in history on their MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for $19.98. Regular price is $69.98, and just $10 more for a king size. You will receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, and so much more. This is a time to try out something other than the amazing products that you've had your eye on. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo Collins, Collins, to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98, or call 800-986-3994. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. You know how I know that? Because I sleep on a MyPillow every night. Go to mypillow.com and use promo code Collins, Collins, or call 800-986-3994 today.
All right, welcome back, Friday's Finest. We are going to get started, and as always, James joins us. James, what part of the country are you at today?
I'm in good old Dallas right now. I'm still in Dallas.
All right. So before we talk a little bit about the debate last night, Talk to me a little bit about what the feeling is around Dallas and Irving and what looked to be a really good first half by the Cowboys last weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles. But, Dak put up great numbers, but Cowboys couldn't pull through at the end of the day. The Philadelphia Eagles ended up winning. But any moral victories in Dallas after that performance?
Well, for the most part, people are still riding high here because of the Texans.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The Rangers.
The Rangers.
The
Okay.
Rangers.
I
was like Texans. The Texas Rangers. People are still hyped about the Rangers around here, which is good. I still see jerseys everywhere. You need that because, one, losing to the Eagles, as we all know, I used to live in New Jersey, so when the Giants lost to the Eagles or the Cowboys, the entire city would shut down and we'd all mourn together. But here in Dallas, they're not thrilled. I've heard because I take walks around the neighborhood and stuff, and you see people with their flags, and you can tell that you hear the conversation on the porch about it. Like, Dak Prescott had 2 good games in a row and they couldn't get the W. And I'm like, you know what, man? Like, calm down. All right. It's not the end of the world. And then I thought back and I was like, 2 weeks ago, I thought it was the end of the world for the Vikings. So maybe it is the end of the world when you lose to the Eagles. The Eagles are just a better football team. I know they say Dallas is more talented, but I don't believe that at all. They have 2 guys that are more talented.
Yeah.
And that might be Micah Parsons and their left tackle, Zach Martin. Outside of that, name one.
Yeah, I tell you, man, and I know we're kind of we're not supposed to start on the sports trail, but it was last week's game. It's the only game from last week other than Miami and Atlanta that we're going to talk about a little bit. But I think from watching that game, the big problem I saw with Dallas is it looked like Dallas played a really good football game. And Philadelphia really didn't bring their A game, on Sunday. And Philly still ended up winning, which I don't know is a good sign for Dallas. But, Dak showed up and played. He had good numbers. I think
2 weeks in a row now. 2 weeks in a row. Dak Prescott is going. But you know why? It's their red zone. It's the red zone issues. And we can get into this later. But that red zone area is like it's poison for them. They can't figure out if they should throw it, if they should run it. Should they run a trick play? They literally don't know what to do when they get to the 20-yard line and in. It is insane. But let me tee up here.
Reminds me of watching our Atlanta Falcons and Tyler Heineke and Desmond Ridder and the boys. But before we get to that, we're recording on Thursday as we do many times, not always, but we're recording on Thursday. And last night, James, was a very busy night. You had a lot going on. You had, as I mentioned before the break, you had the Republican. I hesitate to call it a presidential debate, but that's what we called it. That's what it was an NBC debate. It's what was on NBC. You had that. You had right down the road in Hialeah, Florida. You had President Trump doing some counter programming, and he had a rally at what looked to be a high school there at Hialeah, and got the endorsement of Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was his press secretary for his first year and a half in his presidency. And then you had the Country Music Awards. I was kind of, going back and forth in between the debate and the CMAs. I don't know, James, if you got a chance to watch any of the CMAs, but country music today is not quite like it was when I was growing up. I probably watched more of the debate than I did the CMAs, but Winona Judd comes out for the first set with Jelly Roll and really struggled physically. Looked like Jelly Roll needed to kind of keep her up, and there was a lot of discussion on Twitter and social media channels on her health. That was kind of a strange way to start the CMA. And, I always like watching shows like that because you get all these talented artists and they're under one roof, and they all get to perform a set or two. There was a nice little tribute to Jimmy Buffett as well. He
That's
passed
great.
a few months ago, so it was good to see that. But back to the debate in Miami. The crazy thing about these series of debates, James, and this was the third debate in what is going to be a series of 4 or 5. I think the next debate's going to be in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on 3 weeks. And this was the third debate after they had the first two debates pretty quickly and then took some time off in between the second and the third. And then the standards to meet that the RNC had, the thresholds for the candidates to meet for this debate, were a little bit higher than they were in the other two. It was this was the smallest threshold of candidates that qualified for the debate. You had former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. You had former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Vivek Ramaswamy was on the stage as well. Florida Governor, Ron DeSantis, and it was quite a. Vivek Ramaswamy came out swinging in kind of a bizarre way.
Yeah, he was. I heard somebody describe him like Mike Tyson early on.
Yeah,
just full force, and everybody just didn't know what to do after that.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, right? I mean,
can I make a quick thing? Because tell me I'm wrong about this, and I'm only bringing this to college football because I know you'll understand it. Regardless of your politics aside, this doesn't matter. Doesn't it feel like Donald Trump is a college football player who doesn't want to play the bowl game so he can get ready for the Super Bowl, so he can get ready for the draft?
Oh yeah.
He's just like all the other players. They're like, I can win the Heisman. I can win. What does it matter? You're not going pro.
Yeah.
He's only getting ready for the draft. He doesn't care about anything else. He's going to do his own workouts and his own thing, and he's going to try to basically just take the attention away from nonsense that he can. He's like, I'm not going to go in there, have them talk about my court cases and all this stuff. And I'll just let them fight over nothing. And then when it comes to it, I'll win anyway. He literally doesn't have to. He's just watching people fight. It's kind of what he always dreamed of.
Yeah. When the RNC had this vision, a year and a half ago, I mean, the vision was, hey, we're going to take control of the debates, because if we take control of the debates, then we're going to decide the parameters and the rules and who participate. We're not going to let the mainstream media do that. And I think that all sounded well and good about a year and a half ago, but I don't know that anybody thought that Donald Trump would have a 45 to 55 point lead on his next closest competitor
without going to a debate.
Yeah, that's what he has right now. So if you're Donald Trump, it makes no sense to participate in any of the debates. None.
The first round pick doesn't have to play in the bowl game. That's just the way it works.
That's exactly right. And so it's that's why I said, before the break, it's kind of hard to call it a presidential debate, because it with a straight face right now, with the data that everybody's looking at, James, it's hard to say that anybody on that stage, at least this cycle, has an opportunity to be the nominee.
They're fighting for cabinet spots.
Cabinet spots or maybe VP nominee, right? I mean,
but I feel like the only one who could be VP would be Vivek. He's the only one who hasn't trashed him.
He is, but I don't know if you're Donald Trump. I don't know what Vivek brings you that you don't already have.
Yeah, he's a clone. He's very much doing the same thing, no doubt.
And if you're Donald Trump, James, you're a very strong personality. All these people really strong personalities, but Donald Trump's a unique personality. And one of the things that Mike Pence did well when he was vice president for Donald Trump is he was very comfortable being number two. Vivek doesn't seem to me to be a guy that would be very comfortable being the number two.
No, he would be a great mouthpiece for him, but that's about it. But he doesn't need a mouthpiece. He's never really needed one.
That's exactly right. So, the news that came out, obviously, Vivek came out swinging, and he publicly calls for Ronna Romney McDaniel to resign from the stage, which I thought was a little awkward. Rank and file voters don't know who Ronna McDaniel is. Only, big insiders.
That's correct.
Yeah, and then he takes a shot at Nikki Haley's daughter for participating in TikTok, who I think he felt like I think he go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying that's a weird choice. I mean,
yeah.
How old? I'm sorry, because I don't know. How old is Nikki Haley's daughter?
I think she's in her early to mid 20s.
Oh, okay. So the age that people are on the internet. All right. Yeah, no, for sure.
People are on the internet and the age that people are on the TikTok app.
Of course, people are on TikTok. Adults are on TikTok, man.
Adults are on TikTok. My wife.
Come on, man. This is the thing. He came out and he was like, I'm going to make some form of statement somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And he did. And we're all talking about it. So
we're all talking
it's the one thing that's been talked about all day.
But I did think it was interesting. We'll wrap up with this before we kind of get into what's going to be a busy weekend on the gridiron. But this is the third debate. Vivek in the first debate was very aggressive. And I think he and his team felt like that it didn't maybe go off as well for him as they had anticipated. Sure. So he spent the entire second debate really apologizing for his behavior in the first debate. And then the third debate, he looked a lot like he did in the first debate. So we'll see what happens in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But the reality is, the vision of what the RNC had for what these debates were going to be is a little bit different than what turns out. College football this weekend. We'll start with college football before we get into pros.
Yeah, we can do the pro later. Let's get
we'll do the pros later. College football this weekend. There's a game that really sticks out this weekend, and it's not the game that most people are probably thinking. It's not Penn State, Michigan, even though we're going to talk about that. It's not Georgia, Ole Miss, even though we're going to talk about that as well. Yeah. But the Rutgers-Iowa game is unique because
hell yeah.
It stands out as a game that has a line on the total points, James, of something we haven't seen since the year 2000. In 23 years, there's not been a game that has closed on the betting boards in Vegas as low as the over-under is for that game. I think it opened at 30 points, James, and right now it's at 28 points. Iowa Rutgers is right now. So it opens at 30, and it goes down 2 points. People are betting the under. Your thoughts on Rutgers, Iowa this weekend?
So, oh my God, what are the odds for each?
I think right now it's at minus 110 for both, so it's evened out pretty well.
Yeah, okay. Because I was going to say, 28 points.
Yeah.
That's 2 touchdowns a pop.
Oh, yeah. It's not a game. It's not a game that's supposed to be forecast in a blizzard or.
I understand their defenses play well. They've played well. I mean, they hung him with, like you said, I think it was you last week who said it should count as a moral victory for them hanging with Ohio State for the first half.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't really know. I mean, that's 2 touchdowns and a field goal.
Yeah, it's insane. DraftKings and Caesars are reporting that as of this morning, and as we said, we're recording on Thursday, 80% of the money that had been wagered on the total this week was on the under. So even with a historically low number, I mean, 4 out of every $5.
It'd be one thing
on the under. And you know what happens, James, when 80% of the money in Vegas goes in one direction.
Yeah, you bet on the other direction.
You go the other direction. You go the other direction. So
can you bet? You're in Georgia. Can you bet in Georgia?
I can bet in Georgia, but
legally,
I have to be creative about it.
Okay. No, I'm curious because I don't know what states. I know Texas doesn't have it. It's really annoying because first of all, it's a good thing I live here because in New Jersey I went broke. But no, but in all seriousness, we could get into that anytime you'd want to, how ridiculous it is that every state doesn't have it. But that's the craziest. I mean, you got to bet the over. You got to smash the over. You got to break it. If the odds were better, it would make, I think then more people would do it, but they're only giving you minus 110. What's the point?
Yeah. Craig Mucklow, who is a longtime Las Vegas sports handicapper. I think right now he is with Caesar Sportsbook. He said, I looked through my database and I couldn't find another number in the 20s for the last 15 years.
That's insane.
And he said what he did find, though, in his research was this is just college football games. This doesn't include the NFL.
Sure.
I did find over 1,500 games just over the last 5 years that had higher first half total lines than 28. I mean, think about that for a second.
Yeah, because college football defenses are impossible.
1,500 games in the last 15 years that had higher first half lines than 28, and that's Rutgers, Iowa, and so I'm going to put a little bit of money, not tons.
Okay. Quick question: what'll be a better game, Rutgers, Iowa, or tonight? Which I know the later tomorrow. Bears, Carolina. I'm pretty sure nobody's going to watch.
On which one? Which one?
I said, which one's going to be a better game, the Rutgers Iowa game or the Bears and the Panthers tonight?
Oh, wow.
They've done pretty well for Thursday night football games, but they should have burned that. They should have just said we're not doing it.
Yeah, what are we? Both of those teams are 14 games into their season, or excuse me, no, 15.
Nine, yeah.
Yeah, so they have 14 losses between them and 3 wins between them. So, not a very attractive game. But
that one I would bet the under. That's the game.
Yeah, that's a 38.5. And even though it's not an attractive game, since it's the only game on the docket, although there's a good college football game this week too.
For sure.
I'd say good college football game. I mean, it's Louisville, Virginia, so the game itself is not good. But it used to be they had a lot of Power 5 teams playing in college football on Thursday night, and usually it's been mid majors the last few years though.
Yeah, I was just going to say it used to be better. I don't remember recently wanting to throw on a game.
That's right. But now you got Louisville, which is very quietly 8-1, 5-1 in the ACC.
They are 11. They're ranked 11th right now on both AP and college football rankings.
Yeah, and they've quietly only gotten they only have one loss, and they're 11 in the BCS rankings. So let's kind of pivot there because I had that on my list of things.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Discuss, but first, college football rankings come out, and the first thing that really kind of struck me, James, is not really what's happening at the top, because it's not a surprise that Ohio State and Georgia ended up 1-2, and it doesn't really matter right now in what sequence they're 1-2. Ohio State 1, Georgia 2. To me, it doesn't really matter who's where, because both of those teams, including Michigan, Florida State, they all control their own destinies. But there's other teams in that too. I mean, the list of teams right now. I mean, here we are, the 9th, 10th, 11th of November, and the list of teams right now that are undefeated or have one loss goes 11 deep with Louisville. So your thoughts on the first BCS rankings that came out last week?
Can I ask an honest question?
Of course.
Has Washington not beat better teams than Florida State? Is that what the difference is here?
Man, that's a good question. I think they are separated by fractions of a percentage point.
Right. And I think, that has to be, it has to be something like that. I'm not, because I don't care about Florida State. I have been a lot more interested in Washington. I genuinely, and I mean this so seriously, because I know this is Doug's thing. He's not a fan of Caleb Williams. I have never felt worse for a player in recent memory, watching him go out there and put up almost 50 points, and he still couldn't win. And then they fired their defensive coordinator when they should have done that 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah, they really should have. Caleb Williams is an exceptional talent at quarterback. He checks all the boxes. I just don't understand what beef Doug has with Caleb Williams. But Caleb Williams doesn't play defense, and the reality is Southern California has one of the worst defenses in college football. It's horrendous.
I've ever seen.
Horrendous.
I can't remember a time. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was an LSU team. I don't remember. I just remember. I can't remember a time where the best quarterback in college football on a daily basis is having no choice but to go out every single time and put up numbers. And he comes out pretty quick because the drives end because they're giving up long touchdowns. It's not like it's just like 40 minutes the ball and then he gets it back. He keeps getting the ball back. That offensive line's got to be tired. The receivers got to be tired. That defense gives up the touchdown, go right back to Caleb. Caleb scores. They give up another touchdown. I can't remember a time I've seen this where the quarterback is exhausted and put up that many touchdowns. Like he should. Once you put up 4 touchdowns, you should be pretty safe.
Yeah.
And he's never safe.
Here's how bad it is. Here's how bad their defense is. I think Southern Cal is averaging 41 points a game, and that's an average, right? So
yeah.
There's been games when they've been in the 50s, 60s, and maybe it's higher than that. I don't even know. But, they're a 15-point underdog this weekend at Oregon. And Oregon's an incredible football team, and I think Oregon's 8-1. I think they have a great chance at making it to the playoffs. And Bo Nix and Michael Penix right now are running 1-2 in Heisman odds. But I mean, for a team that's averaging 41, 42 points a game to be a 15-point underdog to anybody, what does that tell you about their defense?
Chip, you know much more about college football than I do. They're putting up 43.5 points a game, it says on their website.
Yeah.
45.5. Do you know how much they're giving up? 34.
I can't fathom that. I would think it would be 30-something points.
34.5.
A game. Unbelievable.
A game. Oregon's going to put up 100.
And look, I think Oregon is probably the top scoring offense in college football. The second.
You're going to put up 70 points.
Is about to play them this week, and so that average is going to go higher.
Bo Nix is about to get his Heisman this weekend.
Yes, he is.
Because as much as I want it to be Michael Penix, and I would have accepted Caleb, but he can't. It's just not going to happen now. Bo Nix is going to get his Heisman this weekend and put up about 5-6 touchdowns. And if you're Michael Penix, you just got to pray that you have a good game.
That's exactly right. And Penix, though, even though Washington's 9-0, I mean, their body of work, I think at the end of the season might look a lot like Florida State's is, but, they got 3 games left, and 2 of them are tough games. 2 of them are against top 25 teams. I think Utah and Oregon State. They play Utah this weekend. They play Oregon State after that. They
play Utah this weekend. That's going to actually be a great game.
It could be a really, really, really good game.
Oregon State's 12. I didn't even realize that. So they play a 13 and a 12, and then they obviously play unranked, but that's Washington State. We all know how those games go regardless.
Yeah, so I think it always ends up playing themselves out. The one thing we don't know, though, one thing we know for certain, James, is these BCS rankings when they're in week 1 or week 2, and we're looking at it and we're thinking, oh gosh, Washington's 5. How can you leave them out? The reality is there are probably at least 10 teams that control their own destiny. Maybe even 11. Although Louisville, I don't know that I'd put them necessarily in that category. They finished with Miami and Kentucky. It's hard to believe they'd run the table and go 11-1, but it's possible. Penn State, who's 10, is 8-1. They play Michigan this weekend. So, they probably control their own destiny too. Let's talk about that Penn State-Michigan game. And the one thing we don't know is, we know that Michigan's a really good football team. They're number 3 in the BCS, and we know they have one of the best defenses. Certainly have the best defense in the Big Ten, maybe one of the best defenses in college football. But this Jim Harbaugh, Connor Stallion situation is just fascinating because adjudication at the NCAA level for infractions, usually takes years, James. Takes years. But this one's a little bit different, right? I mean, this one kind of broke after the season began, kind of around week 3 or 4. It's pretty obvious right now the rules were broken. You have videotape evidence of it. We now know that Connor Stallions was purchasing tickets. Really low-level tickets to a lot of Michigan's opponents' games and stealing stealing their signs. We know that Ryan Day's brother is a private investigator. He's investigated. He kind of broke. Was responsible. Now we think we're kind of breaking the story, and so, look, Jim Harbaugh's come out and said I knew nothing about it, but the NCAA has made it very clear, and the Big Ten has as well, to the sportsmanship clause in their conference bylaws that, it doesn't really matter. And the conference and the NCAA, they don't need to prove that Jim Harbaugh knew or didn't know of something like this. And so, it certainly looked like at the beginning of the week, they were on a fast track to render judgment against Jim Harbaugh and maybe suspend him for the final 3 regular season games so that he would be eligible to coach in the postseason. But, they presented their findings to the university, and the university's lawyers at Michigan gave a 10-page response yesterday that they are fighting this and that they do not want Jim Harbaugh to be suspended for these final 3 regular season games. But, don't you think if Michigan runs the table, which is clearly a possibility, and ends up in the college football playoffs, and they certainly have the talent to do it, what does the NCAA do then with the college football playoff that would include the Michigan Wolverines? Do you allow Jim Harbaugh to coach in those games? Or do you send a message that what their program did was wrong, and do you suspend him and let somebody else coach?
I don't think there's a good answer here. This certainly reminds me of it's probably like, I don't even want to give a number, but I'm assuming it's around 8 years ago, 6-7 years ago, when Rick Pitino got in trouble. The Louisville Cardinals had the prostitute scandal or whatever it was, and he didn't know. Apparently, I always thought Rick Pitino knew. I always assume he always knows. He looks like the sketchiest human being who's ever lived. But he didn't know, right? Let's say he didn't know, but it's still in his wheelhouse. It's his. If you're the CEO of a company and somebody screws around under you, it's still you're liable for it. In this scenario though, what purpose would this guy have to cheat that isn't a directive of someone directly under Jim Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh himself? You don't do that. Like, if you were to bring this to Jim Harbaugh and he was an honest guy or whatever, he'd be like, get this out of my face. No chance. I'm not getting screwed for this. You can't do this on your own. If he's not, he directed him to do so. That's the answer. And you're right. If this is, they are praying that Penn State wins this game, because they can have an excuse to say, no, they don't deserve it. They're looking for any reason that Michigan stumbles. They're praying they stumble. I feel bad for the kids because they didn't do this, and I always hate that it's them that get screwed.
We'll wrap up real quick because we're 40 minutes into this, and our time has flown by. But there's only 3 games this week in the NFL. Only 3 games with winning teams facing each other. The game that I think is most compelling is a game going to be down in Jacksonville this weekend. The Jags coming off of their bye week. The 6-2 Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be facing these suddenly struggling San Francisco 49ers, who are 5-3. They've lost 3 games in a row. Is it very realistic? I mean, is it possible? Of course it's possible. But is it realistic? I mean, the 49ers are a favorite there, which I thought was, interesting. I was probably thinking about taking the 49ers.
It's in Jacksonville?
It's in Jacksonville.
Oh no, that's I'm taking Jacksonville.
Yeah, man, it's also, but it's also hard to believe that they could lose 4 games in a row as good as their defense is. And 3 weeks ago, this team was 5-0 and undefeated, and they looked like they were sailing their way into the postseason. And now, if you lose this game, all of a sudden you're 5-4, and now you got to worry about making the playoffs. And they see that Deebo Samuel's been practicing all week, so he might be back. Trent Williams is a possibility, but I don't feel like the Jaguars are getting any respect here. And, if I could see the line being a pick 'em, but San Francisco -3 on the road at Jacksonville, that's a 4-hour and 15-minute flight, man.
Yeah, that's super disrespectful. That is the most disrespectful line, and we talked about Iowa Rutgers earlier today.
The only other game real quick, Baltimore -6.5 at home against the Cleveland Browns, the 5-3 Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson's back with them, but right now it's Baltimore's kind of.
I love this matchup.
Great matchup.
Yeah, best defense in the league versus possibly the best offense in the league. That's a great matchup.
I'm going to buy the half-point uptake, and I'm going to take Cleveland +7. I just think that game is a game that Cleveland could win with Deshaun being back too, and I like it being within a touchdown. Do you want to guess the only other game? We're going to wrap up with this. Do you want to guess the only other game on the NFL docket featuring winning teams?
I already know what it is because I've seen the schedule 1,000 times, and that's the Vikings and the Saints.
The Vikings.
I already know what it is. It's Vikings
and the Saints. And I wouldn't be surprised because I know Minnesota's got a winning record because they came into Atlanta at 4-4 and won. I was surprised to realize that New Orleans have a winning record too. What's going to happen on Sunday? Now, Josh
that's because they just keep getting away with it.
What's that?
Sorry, you said his name wrong. It's MVP candidate Josh Dobbs. I think you need to make sure we get that right every time.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
how do you handicap that game after the roller coaster of emotions that the team had to have after their
that's a toss up game probably. Yeah. I think most people would call it a toss up. I would say the advantage is to New Orleans in the fact that it's in New Orleans. Am I wrong?
No, it's actually up at U.S. Bank Stadium in Minnesota, and so it's the second. It's the second.
And Vikings by 7. Never mind. Yeah. Vikings by 7. No question. Absolutely. Well, we're going to. Our defense is playing great. We're taking out Derek Carr.
You know what the line is for that game? Kind of surprised me, James. New Orleans -3. New Orleans -3. So.
Oh, is that so? So the disrespect. So really, what they're saying is -6.
That's right.
They're really saying -6. Okay,
I'll take it.
That's cool. The Vikings have handled disrespect before.
No respect this week at all.
100%. Vikings are winning.
No respect at all this week.
We are the Rodney Dangerfield of the NFL.
That's exactly right. I'm going to put you on the spot for one more. We're going to close up with this. James, I know. I know you. You might not necessarily be a betting man, but I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to say, how many points do you think will be scored in the Rutgers-Iowa game this week?
41.
Woo, 41. I was going to say 38, and I thought that was going to be high, but you got 41. Either way, both of us.
And it's going to Rutgers.
Yeah, and they'll be a special team. Yeah, there'll be a special teams or a defensive score in here. And there'll probably be some points early. I think the first half line, I don't know what it is, probably a little less than half of that, maybe right at half of that we'll probably end up hitting. But James, we've gone over our time again, which always happens when we get to guest host this. So I will give you the last word before I say goodbye to everybody, and let you give the audience whatever thoughts that you want to give on Friday Fun Day, heading into what we know will be a busy week.
Oh yeah, listen, bet the over in the Rutgers game, and do not count out the Vikings yet because the Pasternaut and the rest of that team are going to the playoffs, as we are in a playoff position right now. Also, to the Jaguar fans that are being disrespected that I'm finding out about right now, you make sure you show up in Jacksonville and you go for it because they're going to need you because San Francisco's coming on a 3-game losing streak. Go for it. Anyway, the floor is yours, Chip. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah, man, I think Jacksonville's getting disrespected too. You're talking about a team that's also, I mean, their body clocks are playing. It's tough. It's tough to go from east to west or west to east when when you got a 3-hour time difference on football. I suppose the West Coast teams are a little bit used to it, but man, I tell you what, timing too with Deebo Samuel coming back. I'm with you. I think that game is close, but it could be within a field goal, and that way it'll be a push. Guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening this week. Doug will be back next week, and James, next week we're going to make him answer to what happened at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on this past Sunday, and you'll get a chance to have that. You'll get a chance to have that discussion with him. But thanks everybody for joining us, man. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week on the Doug Collins Podcast.
All right, everybody, we're back again another time to talk with our friend Charles at Legacy Precious Metals. Charles, I mean, this time of the year, it's in the fall time of the year, it's become a regular occurrence of CRs, shutdowns, threats of shutdowns, everything else. And it leads to what is interesting for me, and I'm going to throw this out there for you, for those who are looking at your investment portfolios. Wall Street seems to have, over the last few years, sort of built in this kind of chaos. You're from the metals perspective. Do you see the metals sort of building in the same kind of perspective, or how do they take things like this?
We are beginning to see a natural built-in season where we expect shutdowns.
That's sad.
It's a horrible thing to say, and every time it comes out of my mouth and I hear it, it makes me cringe inside because it's never been more prevalent than right now. It's a shame. But yeah, we begin to say, okay, here's this period of time where there's going to be some unknown. And you see the price of metals usually move up pretty strongly with that because that's part of what metals do. It's protection against the unknown. It's insurance. And a government shutdown is the unknown, right? We don't know what they're going to say. Okay, you continue to work and we'll pay you back later. You go home. It really turns into this, obstacle of how do we cobble enough services to maintain a functioning nation while we're in this shutdown, because we can't just turn everything off. So what needs to stay, and who gets to work without a paycheck, and then we'll say, don't worry, we'll pay you back later, which is unfair for these people to have to do. Most of them are in a position where they understand that and they do it because they're patriotic. I'm going to say it's not just the job. They believe in America, but it's an unfair thing.
Isn't this a way to look at it, though, Charles, as we think about investing really in an overall perspective, but especially metals and other things, is that we're doing this, you investigate, you look, and you decide what to do no matter what the investment is, but it's not an overnight quick get rich quick kind of thing. Doesn't this play into the idea that you need to look at the long term?
Absolutely. And I would even say, thank goodness it's not a get rich quick scheme, because when something is a regular investment and it takes time to really see the benefits, it's a long-term thing. It gives you a longer opportunity to continue to invest in it. Right. That length of growth is also the ability to have a investment that's worth having that you don't miss the window on. And that's important. We need to know that we have a place to put money for the next 10, 15 years, if that's where our investment parameters are. Right. If it was get rich quick, if you didn't hit the window right, you're out. There is no protection. And that doesn't help anybody.
The great part for all the Doug Collins podcast listeners, and the great friend that we've had in the relationship we've had with Legacy Precious Metals, again, do all your homework, do everything that you need to do. But we're just, we're saying, hey, here's an option. One of the things we've not talked about in a while, Charles, is just really where the state of pricing on metals is right now. We talk about the stock market going up and stock market going down. Metals are similar. I've been watching it as well. I will tell everyone I'm a customer of yours as well. So, I look at it. It does go up and down though, doesn't it?
Absolutely. As it's supposed to. Right. Without fluctuation, you don't have a live investment.
Right.
You need a live investment. You need a marketplace, right? When you're ready to buy, you want to be able to buy it. When you want to sell, you want to be able to sell it. That requires a marketplace. Anything that is active with a marketplace is going to have fluctuations. That's a sign of health. Okay. So yes, it will go up and down. And we don't do this for where it's going to be today or tomorrow. Quick question for you. Do you know where gold was last year at this date?
No, you got it.
I knew that I would.
That's why we come to you, Charles.
I knew that I would. And this is okay because this is what happens, right? Once you buy the gold, you quit really monitoring it on the day to day. But gold was at $1,650 an ounce. We're at $1,900 an ounce right now.
Wow.
But that's its job.
Yep.
And that's what happens when you get protection. When the fear gets removed, you don't have to watch and monitor everything. You can go on to focus on other things. And that's the great thing about an investment in precious metals. It gives you that opportunity.
Well, the best investment when I was a kid, Charles, I was working at my first job at the grocery store, and they had a where you could put it into a savings account. You could put it into, and it was drawn out of your check, and it was $5 or $10, and I never missed it because I never had it.
Right.
And so sometimes I think investments, I'm not saying that you don't miss it or anything else, but you always invest with money that you have, not money you hope to have. And you look at that. But again, once you invest it, you just sort of leave it there because that's the power of that long-term, look, no matter what investments you make, gold, silver, platinum, all these are not any different than that. Correct?
Correct. And it's a great way to look at it. It's like those old EE series bonds. You bought them at a discount, you held them to maturity, and they were worth the face value. You just did it every time you got paid. Every time you had some money, you bought some. Same thing. You put your money in, and what it does at the end of your investment parameter, you've protected your purchasing power.
Yeah. So what can we get? Yeah, it reminds me of my dad. God bless my dad. I still have him. He's 85 now. He took out an insurance policy on my brother and I years ago. He still pays $10. I mean, this it's just amazing because that's something he wants to do. That we'll have that little bit of money as we go forward. But look, folks, you're out there. You're looking at your investments. You're looking at the shutdowns. You're looking at everything else. Again, think long term. Think for yourself. Get good advice, the best advice I've ever had in the world. And I'll share this with you, with you, the listeners on this podcast, with Charles. Well, I've had two things I've never, even though I am an attorney, I still, the two things I never skimp on is good legal advice and good accounting advice. The other thing you never skimp on is good investment advice. And that's what you need to find. Go out and do your homework and do that. That's why Legacy Precious Metals has been a great partner with this show. It's one that I'm glad to have Charles come on and talk about the markets. And then we let you make the decision. They've got a great online platform. You can do own trading. Once you set up your own account, you don't even have to talk to them if you don't want to, but they're always there for you. Charles, you're just the best. We appreciate you. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure as always. Thank you, sir.